So suddenly, we see that BIM has become a global phenomenon. And in fact, the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation also has been running a couple years in which we started to talk about BIM, green, and smart city. So over the years, my team and I have come up with a balanced scorecard, a management scorecard, to understand how do we evaluate BIM maturity. How do we know what a team, what a professional, what a country can do with BIM adoption? We provided a vocabulary to say what does it take to make it an all-rounded BIM adoption. And some examples was that we applied that for the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation. When APAC asked us to help them to publish a startup guide for countries, this is what we came up. And in fact, I do see that Brazil is hitting a lot of those components with the exception of one. Brazil is now also able to be aligned with our APAC BIM guide to say that we need to understand our status quo. How good are we doing today? And my understanding is that your targets is not from thin air. It's actually from good economic, good research to come up with those targets. So understanding current performance is very good. We also start to see today that Brazil, you have 4 pillars of pilots. That's also what we recommended to the APAC economies. You have a strong policy moving forward for the next 10 years. That's also an important tier of what we had advised the APAC economies. Engaging the industry, which is exactly what today and other related activities, or objective number 1 from Ms. Tolita, that communications, engagement, it's also here. Yet what I have not seen as much, well, during my 2-day visit, perhaps that's a lot more, and I need to stay and visit Brazil more to see, it's what may be some local innovation that can understand the Brazilian way of doing things, that can understand what you are challenged and how BIM can help us to innovate. So applying our scorecard, which we have 4 areas, and applying that globally, we would like to see where Brazil could be in the future. But right now, let me share with you what we have seen in terms of the global adoption of BIM. In terms of planning, by planning meaning setting the target, aiming high, we saw good planning from Brazil today. We also do see that in both UK and Singapore, the ambition of why the country needed BIM was very, very high, was very, very good, right? In UK, we even see that they wanted to get 50% faster delivery, 33% lower cost. Wow, that's some of the most ambitious goals I've ever seen. In Singapore, Dr. John Kern, who's now retired, used to say that they would like to see 20 to 30% improvements of productivity in 10 years' time. Again, very, very ambitious, very, very good as a way to rally up the industry to go and aim high. Aiming high, it's good if and only if we can deliver. What we have seen in the green world, for example, the Paris Treaty, in which Obama administration, Trump administration, or let's be less political. Apparently, U.S. is voting today, and I'm here in Brazil. So is that maybe take the Kyoto Protocol. Canada in 2002 said that yes, we'll sign the Kyoto Treaty. In 2011, the previous leader has gone, retired, outvoted, and then Canada was pulled out from the Kyoto Treaty. Rather than getting 6% reduction of greenhouse gas emission, there was more. So I don't want to, my assistant picks another country that we are not located in. I'm sure that you hear that from your political leaders leading up to your election. I'm sure that I hear that in my news in the US. But what we want to make sure is that BIM is something that we can deliver. BIM is not just an empty promise. And then if I were to pick US and Brazil, what that was telling was that our amount of construction output was lower than a couple of years ago. But then our productivity still has tremendous room for improvement. So these are very, very important indicators. But what happened is that these are macro indicators. You often see that when you're too late. So what we want to make sure is that we can live with those data with BIM in a much faster manner and be able to influence, be able to be swift, be able to improve our productivity over time. So it is very refreshing to see what Brazil has come up. A lot of very, very important promises, a lot of very, very lofty ambition, and we want to make sure that Brazil can do that, can continue to deliver that. So planning, it's about setting targets, but planning, it's also about making sure that we can deliver those targets. Then when it comes to adoption, we want to be much more open and collaborative. We want to be able to share our risk and rewards. We certainly need, and BIM can help a lot with appropriate technology. But the idea is that even though we are different companies, even though we have different contracts bonding us together, we want to act as a single purpose entity. Not like owners is trying to go here, my architects is thinking about their design awards, and my contractors are thinking about how to benefit from my 25% kind of like fee estimate. So what we see is that if the team is aligned, if we can learn from NASA about how the Jet Propulsion Lab are putting together engineers, decision makers, using good technology, what we have seen with the Walt Disney Imagineering working on one of the hotel projects was that we are able to leverage BIM to make faster decision and to make a more informed decision at a lower cost. So if BIM, it's about making good decision, engaging the stakeholders, it's also about the facility life cycle. BIM is not cheap. BIM takes resource, takes investment. Yet, the return for design, the impacts on construction, operation, and the productivity, happiness, wellness, and healthiness of the ultimate end users, it's even much larger. So how do we present these value proposition to the Brazilian public, to the investors? How can we go from the left-hand side to the right-hand side? And that's one example I want to show in the upcoming video from the Singapore Ministry of Health. We are working with the Singapore Ministry of Health, who has a network of hospitals in a small country of Singapore, who would like to see how we can use BIM to help us be more digital, be more predictive, be able to understand parts, be able to search with higher reliability. The idea of this video is that BIM is not just about coming up with a design, coming up with a clash detection, coming up with a pretty movie. We want BIM information to be readily available in your handheld device, in your phone, so that you can rely on that and run this kind of analysis. Be able to not knowing how to do BIM for design, BIM for construction, but able to benefit from BIM information. For example, how are the hospital being utilized? You can leverage BIM and information behind BIM to allow us to be able to compare different projects, different hospitals, different construction methods, different utilization using BIM information. So think about how BIM can help us with longer-term facility and asset management, especially for those who do not need to understand design, who do not need to understand construction. The third part of a balanced scorecard methodology, it's what we call technology. And by technology, we are saying that forget about the Hollywood BIM. By Hollywood BIM, it's a BIM that looks nice, but doesn't have much depth, doesn't have much behind it. How can we, like the 3D laser scanning, or like what we have done at Stanford University about 10 years ago, And you now start to see more such technologies coming in your solution providers, like the Autodesk, Bentley, ArchiCAD. We now start to see more automation. Yet 10 years ago, what we were able to do with our PhD students was that we were able to train the computer about algorithm, about AI, artificial intelligence, and be able to let the computer scripts do a structural balancing and structural trade-off in 3 seconds, rather than what a traditional professional may take 4 hours. And using cloud computing, using many processors, we were able to do 12,800 alternatives so that we can come up with one that gives you cost saving, that gives you the maximum cost saving. These are the type of computer innovation and automation and optimization that is becoming more and more available. And the question is, are we leveraging that enough here in Brazil? Because the cost of investing the model, it's already there, it's already made. So how can we redeem the benefits? And once we have redeemed the benefits, are we measuring it? Are we able to report that? So this is what we have done over the years, always ask for quantifiable evidence. For example, can we quantify that with the use of BIM? Can we quantify that with the use of BIM? We are able to turn a 30-day process into 3 days. Can we improve the accuracy from plus or minus 20% to 5%? Can we do more alternatives from 3 to 30? Similarly, can we reduce the time to do a scenario rather than estimating with a 350% accuracy? Can we get down to 5%? Rather than doing that in real work, like Chicago in Optima case, doing 30 projects in 30 years to have experiences only after 30 years, can we spend half a day and come up with 13 alternatives and be able to virtually simulate and optimize? Or like in our facility management examples, can we reduce the time to search from hours down to minutes? Can we become much more proactive and not reactive in facility management? Can we come down to millimeter of accuracy when it comes to asset and facility management? So over the years, my team has come up with 8 major categories of why we are using BIM. How do we measure the benefits of BIM? I look forward to working with you all in the future to see if these 8 may be applicable for Brazil, or should that be 6, should that be 10? What may be appropriate for Brazil, and how do we quantify that? So if the balance scorecard can help us to evaluate and navigate economies and countries, we can also bring it down to projects and portfolio. So for example, we actually did some pilots with Brazil, yet this is an example outside of Brazil. Once we have evaluated how a project is performing, we can then understand that if my adoption is good, but my planning was missing, how do we bring that up to speed? How do we improve over time? So that we can be able to quantify that, be able to articulate how we are doing, and more importantly, are we getting continuous improvement over time? And if that was a project evaluation, what we have done, and potentially also with Brazil, is to look into what a portfolio of projects tell us about a country or an economy. This is what we have done for Hong Kong, a small city of Hong Kong, to look into where do all these projects fit in the global scale. And should Hong Kong be more focused on standard, or do they need to more focus on education and mindset change? But the evaluation, it's only a mean to an end. The BIM score, it's only relevant if we can prove that the airports, the train stations, the schools, and the projects that you are delivering, it's indeed performing. So what our team has done is that we also look into how do we evaluate the performance of infrastructure or high-speed train station projects. You may say that we have a train station in London that is over 150 years old. or we have a new train station in Beijing that is only 10 years old. How do we evaluate them? Is it by the size? Is it by investment? Is it by the number of trains? So what we did was that, yes, we used BIM for some of the newer train stations. But then the BIM was really helping us to understand how does the station work in terms of connectivity, passenger experience, circulation, and societal impacts. And how we could then use the balance scorecard to evaluate the performance of the asset, the performance of the projects, the performance of the infrastructure. Another example of what we have done is that once we have this kind of data, we can start to say that different project delivery. In Brazil, you may still be doing a lot of design bid build, design tender build. Yet in the US, after BIM started to take position, we started to have more and more IPD projects. IPD stands for Integrated Project Delivery, like the ARA diagram I showed you about. And then once we have enough data set, we're able to say that by going IPD, what kind of additional benefits do you get? We are not saying that everybody must use IPD. BIM can allow a design bid build project to be a better design bid build project. You don't need to always change it to design build. You don't need to always change it to IFOA or IPD. But then you can now make a more informed decision. Does it worth the investment? Does it worth the risk to go to an alternate project delivery? And once we have data set, we can also learn that what are some of the top performing projects doing versus some of the worst projects are doing. And what we can say is that having quantitative evidence to demonstrate how you do BIM, it's very, very important. So over the years, my team and I have also published, not yet or not that much in Portuguese, but we need to work on that, apparently. But certainly we have also published at the AIA Professional Handbook. We were responsible for the whole technology chapter, and also lots of global publications, such as the Dodge Analytics. Yet, thank you to Professor Sergio Shea, we were able to collaborate a couple years ago to work with my students at Stanford University and the Brazil community to look into how to use the same scorecard to understand the performance of the Brazilian industry. And at the same time, we're also working with Professor Sergio Shea and our PhD students, and our master student to continue that exploration. What we are continuing to do at Stanford University with my research group is to say that, first of all, very few projects are measuring, only 25% based on some of our recent studies. But then for those who are measuring, they each are measuring differently. They each are measuring using their own metrics, using what they think were good. What we have done is that we have looked at all the metrics, all the key performance indicators, and came up with 10 KPI for BIM. That's my clock saying that I need to speed up. Is that being able to deliver projects on budget and on time may also be something relevant for Brazil. Yet, can we have accountability? Once we have the projects, can the Brazilian state government, federal governments, be able to rely the BIM 10, 20, 50 years later as the single source of truth? That is accountability. BIM should also be about prosperity. For some countries that I have been working with, I see that BIM is about faster, BIM is about doing more. But then they have construction companies that go bankrupt. They have companies who need to lose 30% of the revenue. That's not a good BIM adoption. We need BIM to help us to prosper as a country. We need to be profitable. We need to be able to attract new talents, younger generation, to our Brazilian and our global industry. Last but not least, maybe less relevant for Brazil, but at least for many other parts of the world, we see that the world has changed. We have fire, we have earthquake, we have sea level rise. How can BIM help us such that when there's a bad event, such as a fire taking place, I'm not just sitting behind my news and doing nothing. How we can use BIM to help us to better be recovering from any disaster, come up with preventive strategy, come up with better way to manage power outage and rebuilding. That's the level of resiliency that BIM should be taking part in making sure that we are not only having a smart design, smart construction, smart operation, smart city, but also a more resilient one. So with that, I would like to once again say thank you for inviting me. I look forward to starting this new journey together, starting this new agenda in Brazil together, and want to also invite you to join us globally in this digital and BIM transformation journey. So thank you once again. The application of BIM in the US used about 10, 15 years ago. Also, people thought that, oh, it's only for major projects, for the Disney Concert Hall, for the GSA building. And so what we did with the American Institute of Architects about 10, 12 years ago was to set up a new awards, BIM Awards. We now call that Innovation Awards for small firms. And you can go online to aia.org and you can look it up. What we debated that a little bit. We are saying that should that be about small projects or small firms? We ended up going for small firm awards because there are a lot of large companies, large firms working on small projects. But we want to make sure that small companies can be celebrated. So if you come to the AIA website, you can see small houses, you can see old buildings, you can see historic courthouses, historic projects. You can also see what small teams were able to do with BIM. So today I would say that the application of BIM is pretty wide and pretty global.
I have an anonymous here. How do you see AI in the BIM industry? AI, artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
It's really coming along. So I show one slide about the stadium in which we are able to automate and come up with tens of thousands of solutions. Again, I'm flying back to San Francisco tonight. And as you know, San Francisco is the home of the Silicon Valley. So we now start to see that a lot of the larger companies like the Google, like the Facebook, like the Apple, also starting to more focus on construction. Right? The Apple headquarters use a lot of BIM. Facebook is also having a good campus model in BIM. And more than that, we start to see more and more startup, more and more venture capitalists investing in BIM. And so the application of AI, the application of cloud computing, the integration of kind of like this new economy, it's also becoming very, very active.
Thank you. Não tem mais perguntas? Alguém mais quer fazer perguntas? One more question. The last but not the least, em português. Em um país como o Brasil, onde a mão de obra não é tão qualificada, como você veria uma solução para a eliminação ou diminuição do uso de desenhos/projetos 2D? Como está sendo esta implementação? Oi?
Não está traduzindo.
It's not translating. Oh, okay.
But do you mind to translate that?
Oh, maybe.
I can hear it now.
Recomeça. Yeah? Em um país como o Brasil, onde a mão de obra não é tão qualificada, como você veria uma solução para a eliminação ou diminuição do uso dos desenhos ou projetos em 2D? E como foi e está sendo essa implementação do BIM efetivamente, no contexto de obras dos Estados Unidos, é isso? Oi? Ah, canteiro. Oh, canteiro. Essa eu não sabia traduzir. Sites.
I see. Those are very good questions, and I think for that productivity curve, if you focus on China, Singapore, we also have a lot of, even in the US, a lot of the construction workers may not even speak the same language like in the US. And the education level could be very different from, say, Germany, in which in Germany, all the construction workers, all the construction crews go into very high level of training. And what we've seen is that BIM should also help these kind of labor talents and labor source. For example, BIM can make it much simpler for them to understand the construction detail. BIM should give them 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional way to explain to them how the pieces, how the workflow, how the construction sequence is supposed to be. We have also seen that now at Stanford University, there's some research into looking into how we can make the instructions to construction workers more effectively. Can we use augmented reality? Can we use BIM to explain to them how things are being come up? Can we use daily work order to demonstrate to them? So we believe that BIM should help any level of construction workers to be higher performing. In terms of bringing lean into construction, I think globally, that's tremendous opportunity of how we can do more prefabrication, how we can look into design with manufacturing mindset, what we can learn from the aerospace industry. In the aerospace industry, they actually would understand all the individual parts coming together and even understand how you can make it to be more effective and efficient. We now start to see that in the US, there are more and more companies that look into vertical integration, that look into designing with manufacturing in mind. So that's also certainly something we can do. And if we can do that, then the idea of just-in-time, of lean, eliminating waste, can also be further enhanced. So I'm also confident that with the new agenda in Brazil, that's also certainly BIM and lean elements that we can bring into the Brazilian industry.